get started here. I believe, yes. Hey, Kat, how are you doing? I know we have several people joining here, so I just want to make sure that we give a chance for everybody to be in. We are going to be here in just a second, making sure that if you have questions and things, if you either will put them in the chat box down below, or you can raise your hand, and we'll try to address as many of these as we can throughout the presentation as well. So, and I do have everybody on mute for now, just so for the presentation purposes. So I see your note there, Kat. I mean, we will be, if you do have specific questions, we'll unmute at some point for that as well. So, and then Kathy's, yes. So you should be able to see panelists, and then you will be able to see the presentation slides here from Ryan as well. Another reminder for everybody also that's joining in, again, use the chat feature below, but also for those that are looking for credits for either PTR or USPTA, if you all will shoot me a quick message after, if you didn't use that in the registration, to make sure you send us the your USPTA or PTR number, so you get continuing education credits for this webinar as well. Okay. With that being said, it looks like we've got about everybody in here. I am going to go ahead and get started. Welcome, everybody. My name is Kyle Hoffman. I know I've met several of you through phone calls and emails over the last few months. One of the things that has kind of come out of a lot of the one-on-one conversations and things with you all over the last several months is doing some more hands-on one-on-ones, more networking opportunities with this. So out of the suggestions of the group, we've circled back to be able to put together a CTA Lunch and Learn series on various different topics. We're going to be presenting several different topics over the next several months. With that, if you're interested in being a speaker in these two, we'd be more than happy to have you. We definitely want to make sure that we're covering topics that are relevant to you all. We want to be able to share best practices, and we want to do this to where it's not always just us talking at you. We want to be talking with you for that. So that being said, I want to introduce a friend of mine. He's been a part of the Morgan County Tennis Association, which is located in Berkeley Springs, West Virginia. Ryan and Paula that you see on here are longtime members of the Morgan CTA, and we want to highlight some of the stuff that they've been working on, share some of the best practices and struggles that they had working on a project they recently completed, and we're going to do a little what I call fireside chat on some of this. So Ryan, if you don't mind coming off mute, I am going to dive right in. So Ryan Fincham is the president of the Morgan County Tennis Association. Ryan, if you'll just tell us a little bit about your organization and yourself.
Okay, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me, Kyle?
I can. Yeah, I think they can.
All right, and is the screen showing to everybody?
Yeah, if it's not, please raise your hand. It's on the other side of the chat.
All right, so my name is Ryan Fincham, as Kyle noted. He asked me to speak today about the Morgan County Tennis Association and our project. So he's given me 6 questions, and of course he just asked me the first one. So to tell you a little bit about myself and our organization. Well, I grew up in Jefferson County, West Virginia, specifically in the Summit Point, Charlestown area, if anybody's familiar with that. I did not play organized tennis growing up. And my wife was from Berkeley Springs, so that's how I ended up here in 2006. I have 2 daughters. So far, I've not convinced either one of them to play tennis. They do other things, volleyball, etc. But my son Hayden, he played a lot of youth sports when he was really young, but he wasn't really in love with any of them. At age 9, however, we signed him up for a tennis camp that we had read about in the local newspaper. I drove him to a small little church gym, and he was handed a tennis racket by Paula Osborne. She's on here with us today. Hayden took to that like a fish to water. So at age 10, we enrolled him in the orange and green ball clinics at Stonebrook Club in Winchester. And I guess the rest is history. I'll show you a picture. This is Hayden on the left with his buddy Cole Gore when they were about 11. And on the right, that's he and his buddy Cole Gore, all grown up. Cole plays #1 at Jefferson High School, and Hayden's #1 at Berkeley Springs. So there they are. Hayden's now 17. He plays tennis as much as he possibly can and maintains his 4.0 GPA. But as a freshman, 2 years ago, he made the state AA semifinals. COVID stole his season last year, and we're seeing what happens his junior year. So that's a little bit about us. Now, that day, along with Hayden getting the tennis bug, as I like to say, and as Paula likes to say, I was introduced by Coach Paula to the tennis dilemma facing Morgan County. So she invited me to a meeting of a small community group called the Morgan County Tennis Association. I think this was about 2014 or 2015. And there I discovered there were no regulation-sized tennis courts in playable condition in the entire county. This came as a shock to me, and that statement eventually became our battle cry. I also met Raynette Mock, who was the head high school tennis coach at Berkeley Springs. She explained to me that there was a boys and girls tennis team that had been established in 2005 and had continued ever since, and they had no courts for home matches. And I can just say that my jaw kind of hit the floor. So for nearly a decade, they had practiced on 2 undersized, often sludge-covered courts on Beiser Street in town. And they also played some at Capon State Park. So I'll show you some quick pictures. Here's Beiser Street, nowhere close to regulation size. This is a picture of July in the dog days of summer with the sludge still there. This is where our high school team practiced and could not host matches. And then sometimes we go out to Capon State Park. They look nice from a distance, but all those are cracks, and there's many more. So at this meeting, Paul and Raynette informed me that the MCTA had worked very hard. They had raised $10,000 in the past to build new tennis courts. I have to admit that sounded very promising, but then I got home, I looked up the cost of 4 new tennis courts, and it was about 120 grand. So I was thinking, well, we're a long way from home here. And I'll talk more about that cost, $120,000 here in a bit. The task of building these tennis courts in this small community was daunting. It seemed impossible. And if I'm being honest with myself, my first instinct was to move back to Jefferson County, where they have plenty of tennis courts. But that was a fleeting thought. At the next meeting, I met Eric Lyda. He was actually the #1 boys player on those first Berkeley Springs teams. He had just finished earning his law degree at WVU, and he was ready to give back to the community. He asked us a question. He said, are we, the MCTA, a registered nonprofit? The answer was no. At that point in time, we did all of our programming through the Parks and Rec Board. Well, I guess the end of this question 1 is a 501c3 was born that day. And I'll let Kyle ask me the second question.
Put myself off of mute there, sorry. So talk to us, Ryan, a little bit about the MCTA's main priorities.
Okay, so this is a big question, but a simple question. So the MCTA has a mission statement. Our mission statement is to construct tennis courts, upgrade existing tennis facilities, make instruction available, foster competition, and to generally promote the enjoyment of the sport of tennis to all residents of Morgan County for all age groups. Now, we do, however, focus particularly on the youth of the community. Click here. You know, Morgan County, much like most of West Virginia, has a high rate of poverty, obesity, substance abuse, and the like. So here at the MCTA, we believe that if just one youth participant can be on a tennis court and not in a dangerous situation or not sitting idle, then we have achieved success. So very simply, if we want kids on courts and the courts that we have are unsafe and the courts that we have can only handle a few kids at a time, and we have a high school team with nowhere to host a match, then obviously we need to build new tennis courts. And that's how it came to be. So 2015 and 2016, we spent sponsoring youth clinics, networking, constantly promoting and having meetings and brainstorming. And this is just one of our early flyers that we kind of soaked the community with. So that's really the answer to question 2. How about question 3, Kyle?
Sure. So we know there was a lot of ups and downs for this project to happen and some fundraising challenges, but just talk to us, Ryan, a little bit about the struggles of reinventing this kind of fundraising project and how that's been going on for over a decade.
Sure. So step 1, Eric actually developed this snazzy logo for us. This logo is everywhere now, and having a brand is a big deal. So that was a big step. In December of 2016, with the help of my MCTA team members and others in the community, we sort of gathered up all the information that we could on the local tennis history in our community. And excuse me, I just lost my place. I'm doing 5 things at once here. And we also gathered just general information about the sport of tennis, about how it's a lifelong sport, and about how it's heart healthy and these sort of things. And I wrote at that time in December of 2016 what I like to call the Morgan County Tennis Manifesto. Now that manifesto would be used to create presentations that we would deliver to lots of different entities in the community. We customize it to each group. And what we thought is, okay, we'll explain it to the community and the courts will just come. It's going to be fast. It's not the case. So, and that was December of 2016. So for reference, you can do the math. The courts were finally built and completed in December of 2020. So that's 4 very long, hard fought years, and actually a total of 15 years since the inception of the MCTA in the community. So I presented that manifesto to the county commission, and I'll have to say, boy, were they impressed. They just went on and on about it. And at the end, they said, we have no money. So I presented the manifesto to the school board, and boy, were they impressed. And they went on and on about it. And their response, we have no money. We went to the Parks and Rec board. They have no money. So I sensed the pattern. So it became clear. It would be up to the MCTA to raise this money. And about that time, I'll never forget this, a friend of mine told me this. He said, Ryan, in a small community like this, if you want something done, then you must be a bulldog. And I have to admit, I became a bulldog, and I'm very tenacious, and I'm still that way, and our team is that way. So the next thing we were looking at, so we figured out, hey, we've got to raise a bunch of money, and people aren't going to hand it to us. So we needed to find a location. This picture is an original sort of hand-drawn schematic of trying to get courts next to the Risa Head Start Elementary School in our town. What we found out is it's all floodplain. And so even though there was a lot of people in our community pushing us to this site, we fought it and said, no, we're not going to build new tennis courts with that expense in a floodplain. So we got rid of that idea out of people's minds, and we went to another site. The next site, right here, this was a wooded site right on Route 522 near the Little League fields. And we contacted USTA. They did us up a little mock drawing. We were in business, and we pursued this one for a while. But after many months, it became clear that the county had a lot of other priorities, and they weren't looking to get the trees off of this property, and they weren't looking to move forward for in any reasonable amount of time. And to be honest, one of the driving factors is my son in high school, coming soon. So we pulled off of that project and we went to the next site. So the next spot, I'm just showing you this because this was a lot of anguish as we were moving from site to site. This was behind the intermediate school, and they're lined off as soccer fields, but really it's just a PE area where youth soccer used to take place. But youth soccer, with help from the Parks and Rec department, built brand new tennis or soccer fields. So I thought, perfect, we'll use this area. Well, the principal didn't like that very much, so that didn't last long. So we moved to there's another soccer field next to the middle school, and we really liked this site. We pursued it very vigorously, actually. But we found out that the high school soccer team still used it for practice, even though there were new fields that were built. So we got a nope on that one as well. So that led us here. Now this site, and this is our home today, and you'll see it here in a minute. It's now mid 2018. We have no home. We've been working hard, and time's ticking away. But we zoned in on this. It's sort of a plateau area. It was just a bunch of tall grass. But originally, we were told that this area had been proposed for something else, and we were to stay away. Well, after all that time, we figured you snooze, you lose. We've bided our time. We've explored all the other options, so we pounced on it. We approached the school board differently this time. And this was a game changer. So right off the bat, we went into the school board meeting. We made it clear we're not asking for any money. Now, that's a great place to start a conversation with the school board. We simply requested that land be dedicated for tennis court use. They said yes. We then went back to the Morgan County Commission and we said, look, in light of this land dedication, would you donate $10,000 towards us developing an engineered site plan for tennis courts? We got another yes. Then we went back to the school board. Now we're in, extremely late 2018 or early 2019, and we said, school board, we've now got some money. We've got our 10 grand seed money. The commission's given us 10 grand. Will you join up with us? We'll split it 50-50 on an engineered plan. We got another yes. Now we're on our way. The site plan now showed people that we were a real project. They could see what we were working towards, right? In fact, one of our very first big donations that we received was $10,000. It came from Coach Paula's childhood friend. Now, she had considered donating in the past. She talked about it all the time, but it was a donation towards a dream. Now, when we got the site plan, she was donating to something more than a dream. So I just want to make that clear. That was a big step. You've got to have something to show folks. So we established a social media presence and we blew up the internet locally with tennis and with tennis fundraising. We hosted a clinic with the WVU, West Virginia University head tennis coach, and the Mountaineer mascot came down. It was huge, a big event. Paula hammered out tons of youth clinics. Raynette and the high school team, let me show you a picture. Here's some sort of a collage of different events and things that we were doing. We were just hammering it out. And this is a picture of all the success that the high school team was also having with no home courts. Now that speaks volumes to the community. Hey, we've got a little local team with nowhere to play, and they're winning PVCs, our little regional tournament. We're winning the actual regional tournament. We had a all-state player, so that helped tremendously as well. We also, I wanted to show this. We sort of became a fan favorite at the Apple Butter Festival Parade, which is a huge event in Berkeley Springs. We developed a way using our banner to play tennis as we marched. And that's actually, it was genius, and it worked to spread the word. So we basically asked for money everywhere and anywhere we could, and we kept folks updated on our progress. And that's the end of my answer to question 3, Kyle.
Okay. And I appreciate some of your sending in questions and things as we go. We'll address more here at the end with this, but I think my 4th question will probably be what starts sparking some questions for the group.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I had asked Ryan to talk about was just some of the strategies that you went about going to go after larger donations. What were some of the challenges and how did that lead you up to do your ask?
So I guess I started this section with, let's be honest with ourselves here. Asking for money is a challenge. None of us like to do it. I'll admit it did become easier and easier for me personally because I was fighting for my son. And, I wasn't going to stop until we had the courts, but we wrote lots of letters. We applied for lots of grants. We presented to lots of groups and people. We spread the word constantly. It was a constant, drumming of we need tennis courts. In fact, I'm actually still surprised today that my wife stayed with me. I'm being serious. I worked on this stuff day and night. I mean, if I wasn't working on my regular job to pay the bills, I was working on tennis courts. So Now, before we talk about large donations, Kyle, I want to just mention some of the small ones. So small donations are not small at all when you put them together. So we started doing Facebook fundraising drives. Our first one was Giving Tuesday, on Facebook in 2018. It's in November. It was successful, very successful. That led to many more. Individuals then started sponsoring us as their nonprofit birthday fundraiser on Facebook. And those are super successful. I did one, my son did one, Paula did one, and several others. And those fundraisers generally netted us somewhere between $200 and $1,000 each. So do the math. If you have 10 people do a Facebook fundraiser and they average $500, you just made yourself $5,000. Okay, and it's unbelievable, and it works. People will donate. It's easy to click a button. They give you some money, and you're going to get donations of $10 or $100 and everything in between. So then at one point, our fundraising kind of slowed down. We had gotten a bunch of the big chunks, which I'll talk about here in a second. But we were near the goal that we had set, but see, the goalposts kept moving. So we put out sort of a local cry for help. And because now we were established, this is a real project. We have a good track record. The local people responded, and we actually received several back-to-back $1,000 donations from local businesses. These are the same businesses that, we were kind of, fishing for early on, but we went back. Now we're real. Now we're going to build courts. Now they can see it. And we got, I don't know, 7 or 8 that $1,000 checks in a row. I just wrote here, you never know until you ask, or ask twice, or ask a third time, with plenty of rest, in between each ask. We also used PayPal. We collected money through our website of all different amounts. I wanted to share that the coolest donation that I saw was we received 3 $5 donations over a period of like 3 months. And I met the guy who did it. He was on the town tennis courts, hitting with his older father. They were wearing boots and they loved playing tennis. And, I got to say, those 3 donations meant a lot to me. I did note when I wrote this last night, I messaged that guy on Facebook because he likes our page. And he said, I just played on the new courts yesterday, Ryan, and they're amazing. I also wanted to highlight relationships. So we established relationships and partnerships with the USTA Mid-Atlantic, Morgan County School Board, Morgan County Commission, Morgan County Parks and Recreation, and many other entities. But also, we form relationships with individuals. One such individual is Garland Ott. He goes by Gar. Gar's been the coach of the Jefferson Juniors middle school team in Jefferson County for like 40 years. Paula had known Gar for years, as she was introduced to him actually through Kyle Hoffman for some youth play put-togethers. And my son Hayden played with him for 3 years on his middle school team. As a proud dad, I'll quickly note that Hayden was the first non-Jefferson County kid on that team, and he actually played number 1 in 8th grade. So hoot hoot. So we had a relationship. Gar knew very well about the tennis situation in Morgan County, but once he found out that the tennis court cause was on the rise, he immediately did a Facebook fundraiser. That was followed up with a phone call by Gar asking if he could put us on an automatic continual monthly donation out of his checking account for tax purposes. We said absolutely. So we shared our information, and for over 2 years now, we've been receiving a monthly donation that goes right into our account from Mr. Ott. And I just have to say that he also donated to every single fundraiser we've ever had. He personally did 2 or 3 more Facebook fundraisers, and his help has been priceless. So if you know Gar, let him know how much we appreciate him. As far as big donations, so of course we contacted the USTA. We found out there's a $50,000 grant for new facilities, and we made contact there. And you guys, the USTA was great, and we were in constant contact with them every step of the way, so that we were sure that we were designing the facility to meet their standards. We requested funding from the county commission 2 times a year for 3 years. So I highlight this approach of getting funds over multiple years is a great strategy. It is much easier to get $10,000 5 times than $50,000 one time. So that's what we did. And we got $50,000 eventually from the county commission over the 3-year period. Patience is a virtue. We worked with USTA Mid-Atlantic to secure a $10,000 Safe Place to Play grant in 2019. And thanks to the USTA Mid-Atlantic representatives, they reached out to us again in 2020 and we got a second one. We applied for and received a $10,000 development grant from the development office underneath the governor's office in the state of West Virginia Capitol. Then I will highlight one large donation that was an interesting one, and it actually really propelled our project forward, and that's this. There was apparently a discussion at the Presbyterian Church that there may be an opportunity for a large donation. And in doing so with this donation, it had a secondary effect where a larger sum of money would be available to the church to use for other things. So I won't go into the details, and honestly, I wrote here, which is true, I don't know all the details and all the history of it, but I'll share with you this. I drafted a very nice letter to the parishioner that had mentioned the possibility of the donation. Now, again, this is just it's on a whim. I hear something and I act it. So I received a call from this very spunky lady in her 90s, and we had a very pleasant conversation. And I basically said this: look, I'm not getting involved in any church matters, no chance. And I should mention, this church knows tennis because this is the church that Paula's husband, Bob, was the minister at. And Paula and Bob attended the church, obviously, and so did Raynette, the high school tennis coach. This church was, and many of the kids that had grown up in that church played tennis. So they were very, very aware of tennis. So I said this: look, we're not getting involved in church matters. We'll simply say this: if there's monies available to help the local youth, then the MCTA is interested. Several months later, and I'm sure many, many church meetings later, the MCTA received a check for $50,000. Okay, so I mentioned previously the cost was thought to be $120,000 for tennis courts in 2014. Over the years, the numbers that we were working with were this: $150,000, $185,000, $200,000, $250,000. The goalposts were moving, and when we finally put our project out for bid in July of 2019, I believe that's when it was, the lowest bid we received was $550,000. Okay, the school board obviously declined that because, again, we're building it on school property. We're just the funding arm of this operation. We had about $125,000 collected at that time, committed or collected. So immediately we shift gears and we set our goal at $200,000. Because we knew $550,000 was way out of the ballpark, and if we put it out to bid again, we'd get it lower. So we went on a new fundraising drive. It was very successful. We got our numbers up. When we actually received the bids in March of 2020, a year ago, the lowest bid was still high, but it was $365,000. Again, we started this quest. We thought it was 120. But at that moment in time, we had actually raised or secured committed investments of $290,000. So I've been neglecting the PowerPoint. Here's an early flyer we put together. I'm going to go quickly through these so I can catch up to where I'm at. Here's one that we updated as we were in, you can see there we kind of laid it out as 1 seats, 2 seats, 3 seats, so you could donate at any level. And here's just a slide where it talks about our, this is sort of the other side of the coin where the prices kept going up. Our revenue that we've collected kept going up. So we kept going back and telling folks, hey, we have 10 grand now, we have 25, we have 50. But the answers were still no from the school board until we really got the money. And here we are presenting the check for $290,000. All of those collected funds involved in that. And the school board finally saw the light at that point and approved the project, and they would cover the remainder of the cost. And I said to them, well, it's a pretty good investment when you're building a capital project and you only have 20% in the game. But well played by them, I guess. So we gave them the check, and then here's a picture of us when we broke ground. And questions 5 and 6, I barely have anything to say, so I'm going to finish question 4 with this. Here are lessons I learned along the way. Have a location and have a good plan and not just a dream to show people. Seeing is believing. Be flexible. The goalposts are always moving. Stay the course. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And the marathon route is not a circle. And there may be dogs chasing you. And you may be wearing a bacon suit. If you get the idea of where I'm going, you got to keep going. You got to keep pushing. Number 4, exposure, exposure, exposure. They say there's no bad publicity. I also, as Kyle will tell you, I believe there's not too much publicity. I'm on Facebook every day. Kyle probably gets tired of seeing all that stuff. I don't think there's anyone in Morgan County that has not heard of tennis at this point. And then 5, fundraise at all levels, in all places. As I would like to say, we're fishing in all sized ponds for all sized fish. I will mention a caveat here. There were times when something came to us that I felt, or we felt, the means didn't justify the ends. It just seemed like a lot of work for a little. When you're doing a huge project like this, you've got to cut those loose, and we would decline to pursue those avenues. We had to be efficient in our fundraising. So there was some of that. I think that goes into question 5. And the other slides I have are basically pictures of the court. So you want to go ahead and ask me question 5, Kyle?
Yeah, and I think there was a side question too, Ryan, and maybe that will be a follow-up if you have for the lessons learned, if you'd be willing to share those with those, and I can push that out to the group. So kind of a 2-part question, but and he laughed at me when I asked him this originally, but Ryan, just tell me the moment for you that you realized that you may actually come up with the money to make this project happen.
So I told you this is a short.
Still laughing at me.
Well, I looked at it differently. I laugh because, gosh, it was a journey, but as I thought about this question, there's only one answer to it, and that's this. If I'm being honest, I always knew that it would happen. That is what something like this, something so huge, takes. You have to have complete faith and you have to believe. When they would happen and the cost of what they would eventually be, that was all unknown. Even at the very end, like I said, when we received the low bid of $365, we didn't think, oh, great, this is not going to happen. We immediately said, okay, we are short 75 grand. How are we going to make it up? And we made it up by talking to the school board one more time, and this time they got on board. So the answer to the question is, I always realized it was going to happen. And a lot of that has to do with the team. We all believed it. And for those of you that, are faith-based, I think Paula prayed it into action, honestly. That's the answer to question 5.
Sure. And then the fun part, just talk about next steps for your group and what you guys are planning moving forward.
Okay, so I just made a list. So we're looking at getting lights. We're looking at building restrooms. We need some windbreaks and some wind screens. We're going to build some pavilions for shade. We need benches for players to sit on. We're going to do landscaping. We're going to apply for a bunch more grants. We're going to have many, many youth programs. We're going to establish a middle school team, either through the school or through a rec program. We're going to set up adult programs for social play. We're going to host tournaments. And we're going to work on Kekapen State Park to renovate their 2 courts, so they're going to be in good shape. We've been working on them all along, but we're really going to press them now. We're going to add pickleball lines to those Beiser Street courts. Since most of the problems are in the back edges of the courts, we can have folks playing pickleball up near the net. And we, of course, are going to work on building new courts. And I'll show you some slides here, Kyle. So there's groundbreaking. Here's an aerial shot. And I didn't put all the construction. I could have given you 100 construction photos, which is cool to see how they built over time, but I knew we didn't have time for that. So here they are. They're beautiful. Here we go. The MCTA team, small but mighty. On Facebook, we look like we're 100, but there we are. And the reason for my work right there. There's me and Hayden He's got his junior and senior year to play on these, and if I have anything to do with it, we'll play under the lights next year. Let's raise some money.
Okay.
There's our information.
Yeah.
Hey, if you feel like it, you can mail any donations you want to that address. We'll take it. You always ask.
The bulldog continues.
Oh,
well, Ryan, we really appreciate it. I'm going to open it up. If you would like to use the chat box at the bottom, or if you raise your hand, I can unmute you to ask questions. If not, I think I have a question or two. I might circle back for the group just to have Ryan maybe elaborate on the spot, but I'll give it a second for anybody that may have questions or want to ask something live. While they're chatting, Ron, I was going to just circle back to your, you were talking about the Facebook fundraising campaigns. I know in talking to a lot of the group, a lot of the different groups here, a lot of them are working off smaller budgets too. I mean, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, Morgan County as a whole is like under 20,000 people. So it's definitely a small town or a small county. But I would say, you know, I think you mentioned you've raised close to like $5,000, which, you know, I think all of us could definitely use $5,000 in our budget for different projects for that. But just if you don't mind, just kind of talk for a second just on the importance of those and you know, I mean, is it really a lot of work to set those up or to get people to do it?
And you're asking specifically for the Facebook ones?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen you run several of those, and you're always getting money in from them. You know, from people doing from birthdays to just, you know, awareness, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, the key is getting people to share them. So, you know, the first few that we did was a lot of our own personal friends on our Facebook pages. So all the MCTA members would share the post, and folks would donate. But then once those friends share it, it's just a big net. And you do have a lot of multiple. You have people donate to multiple. Like I said, Guard donated to all of them, and he had a friend, never met the guy. Every time we've done one, I see this name Alvarez. Well, Mr. Alvarez, thank you, because he donates every time, because he knows Gar, and he knows Gar's not going to put it out there if it's not something worthwhile. It didn't take a whole lot of encouraging, honestly. It just came organically once we started doing it. But if you do it as an organization, like on Giving Tuesday, then yeah, you've got to keep it in people's faces. Because, and I'm sure there's some people that are like, you know, we're so tired of Ryan posting this stuff, but you have to. You just have to keep pushing it, because, you know, somebody that didn't donate the first 10 times, they might give you something the 11th time, maybe just to shut you up, but that's money in the account.
Well, and the other piece of that too, the gentleman that he's referring to actually does a lot of stuff with middle school age students as well in a different area. So one thing I would just advise for the group when you're doing your reach outs and working on your fundraising, you may have donors in different areas that generally just want youth tennis or whatever your mission may be. So casting a bigger net seems to be, you know, something that you shouldn't shy away from, because I mean, I believe you said Gar was basically on retainer in terms of you know, constantly donating to them, and I personally have seen him do a couple of the fundraising for this project as well. So, you know, just a great guy, but also just a, you know, general love of sport.
Yeah, and your players, you know, when we had my son and a couple other players did Facebook fundraising, and people respond to that. You know, these kids are looking for, whether it's courts or, like you said, maybe you're just looking for $5 grand to put some new paint down or something. I don't know, or whatever, new equipment. Have the kids get it out there, and then if the folks listening are parents, tennis parents, you spend a lot of time standing or sitting watching tennis and hanging out. I never ever sat anywhere without talking about this case, and I would find leads that came out of nowhere, and then you follow those leads. So you just have to, it's a constant battle. My son's friend Sean, who I almost had playing tennis, he's a basketball player, but he calls me the tennis guy. So you got to be known as the tennis guy or the tennis gal or the tennis person or whatever.
I think we have a lot of tennis people on here that would probably be the same role in their respective communities as well. Any other questions from the group for it? And Ryan, thank you again for coming on today and sharing this with us. We'll just give it another second here if
Sure.
anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I can send you I'll send you what I wrote. You can share whatever you want.
Sure, I appreciate that. So I don't see any other questions, and just a couple other housekeeping things that I just want to kind of mention for this. Our next presentation will be April 14th at noon. Kat D'Souza will be our lead speaker on that. We'll be going over programming in the COVID world. I think we're all fighting challenges and things in terms of trying to operate our various programs with the challenges that are faced in front of us. Hopefully things are going to get better and better, in terms of how we want to set this up. But, I would encourage you all to do that. We'll send out email reminders to register for that event as well. Also, I would very much encourage you all to, since many of you have very active boards, to have your board members participate in these as well, because I do think for all of us, this is a little bit of a, keeping us engaged, but also, just keeping us on our missions. And I hope a lot of things that Ryan and the Morgan County Tennis Association shared today will be beneficial to you all in terms of giving some other fundraising ideas for whatever your mission may be. But the other housekeeping piece that I want to mention is many of you have either heard from myself, Alex Chan, or Santosh Mohan. We are doing a phone outreach with you all, just trying to get some follow-up information on plans for this year. We know that's we're all fighting challenges for this year as well to be able to make things happen. But the other piece that I want to mention too is that as you all are making your plans and things, and this is my shameless plug for our Serve Tennis component, is making sure that you all take a chance to look at the new USTA platform called Serve Tennis, just to be able to familiarize yourself with that, as a lot of the tools in there will be helpful to you. I believe several of you have expressed interest, with financial hardship or just wanting to make a change from the website feature of that. I do want to make sure that you all have the opportunity to be able to get your information out, be able to be able to get your word out, but also being able to get people driven to what you all do. So I'm just sharing here the link for that if anybody is interested in starting those processes. But myself, Alex, and Santosh are also available to you all to make that happen, to get you guys off the ground with it. So, you'll be hearing more and more and more about that over the coming months. But I know a great starting point, and thanks to Santosh and Megan from our team to be able to kind of get the step-by-steps for those, because I know a lot of us are not well-versed in the website business. So, definitely having a step-by-step guide is extremely important to help you guys get off the ground. So please, take advantage of those opportunities and the tools that are available with you as well. So that being said, if there's no other questions, and I'm just seeing, and Cheryl, I got your message as well. I'll make sure that we follow up too. If there's no other group questions for that, I appreciate everybody coming out today, and we look forward to having everybody on April 14th. All right. Thanks, everybody.